Imagine waking up one morning and feeling like yourself again. Not the version of you that drags through the afternoon. Not the version that sits in silence wondering where the fire went, but the version you remember. Sharp, driven, alive. Now ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you felt that way? Because somewhere between the life you are living and the life you remember living, something was taken from you. Quietly, gradually, without a single warning. And the most disturbing part is not that it happened. The most disturbing part is that you were never supposed to find out why. There are 8 plants on this earth. 8 plants that have been known, truly known, by healers, warriors, emperors, and indigenous physicians for thousands of years. Plants that were once guarded, traded in secret, reserved for kings, carried by soldiers before battle, sought out by men who refused to surrender to age, to weakness, to the slow erosion of everything that made them who they were. And today, most of them are growing wild, unnoticed, unnamed, in fields, in forests, in the cracked edges of city sidewalks, free for the taking, by anyone willing to know what they are looking at. This video is about those 8 plants. But more than that, it is about a truth that a very profitable industry has spent decades making sure you never had to confront. The truth that your body has not forgotten how to be strong. It has simply been denied what it needs to remember. Now I need you to stay with me, because what I am about to share does not work the way most people expect. These 8 plants are not independent solutions. They are pieces of a system. Each one unlocks a different door. And the door that matters most, the one that changes everything, is the last one. Which means, if you leave before this video ends, you will walk away with only half the picture. Before we begin, if you have never been to this channel before, what you are about to hear is not the kind of content that gets promoted easily. It does not have a sponsor telling it what to say. It does not have an agenda beyond giving you information that actually matters. If that is the kind of content you have been looking for, subscribe right now. Hit the like button. And then, do not move. Because this is the video you did not know you needed. Let me start with a number. Just one number. And I want you to sit with it for a moment before we move on. 30%. That is the average decline in testosterone levels in men today compared to men of the same age just 2 generations ago. Not older men compared to younger men. Not sick men compared to healthy men. Men your age, in the same stage of life measured decades apart, and the difference is 30%. Your grandfather was not a different species. He did not have access to better medicine. He did not train harder or sleep more. In many ways, he lived a harder life than you do. And yet his body was producing a fundamentally different hormonal reality than the one most men are living in today. This is not aging. This is not genetics. This is something that has been done systematically, invisibly, and profitably to the hormonal foundation of an entire generation of men. Through the food supply. Through the environment. Through the chemicals in the water, the plastics in the packaging, the stress architecture of modern life. And through a medical model that identified the problem, named it, packaged the pharmaceutical solution, and then quietly closed the conversation before anyone could ask whether there was another way. There is another way. There has always been another way. And it has been growing in the ground since long before any of this began. What this video is not, I want to be absolutely clear about this, it is not a miracle. It is not a shortcut. It is not a promise that 8 T's will undo a lifetime overnight. What it is a map. A map back to something that belongs to you. That was always yours. And that no one had the right to take away in the first place. If you have been feeling the weight of something you cannot quite name, a tiredness that sleep does not fix, a flatness where ambition used to live, a distance between who you are and who you remember being is less than #0. 5# is greater than then what you are feeling has a name. And it has a cause. And as of today, it has a beginning of an answer. Stay with me. Every plant in this video builds on the last. Every piece of this system connects. And by the time we reach the 8th plant, the one that most people never hear about, the one that ancient civilizations reserved for those they considered most worth preserving, you will understand not just what these plants do, but why the knowledge of them was buried, and what it means that you are hearing it now. Let us begin. If this kind of content matters to you, and I believe it does, because you are still here, please take a moment right now and subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds, and it tells me that this kind of honest, research-backed, nature-first information is what you want more of. And leave a comment below telling me one thing. How long have you been aware that something in your energy or vitality has been off? I read every comment. Let us start with the foundation. Testosterone is not just about muscle or libido, though both of those are certainly important. Testosterone is the primary driver of a man's metabolic health, his cardiovascular resilience, his cognitive sharpness, his emotional stability, and his long-term bone density. It is the hormone that makes the difference between a man who wakes up in the morning ready to face the world and a man who drags himself through the day hoping no one notices he is running on empty. And here is the part that most doctors will never sit down and explain to you. The conventional medical response to low testosterone is pharmaceutical. Synthetic testosterone replacement therapy. Injections. Gels. Patches. Now, I am not here to tell you that those tools have no place. For some men in certain situations, they may be appropriate. But the conversation that rarely happens in that clinical office is this one. What if your body still has the capacity to produce testosterone naturally? What if the problem is not that the engine is broken, but that it has been starved of the right fuel for so long that it has simply stopped trying? That is the question that drives this video. And the answer, as it turns out, has been growing quietly in fields, forests, and traditional gardens across every continent on Earth for thousands of years. The first plant we are going to talk about is one that has been called the king of Ayurvedic herbs for over 3,000 years. Its name in Sanskrit means the smell of a horse, not because it smells particularly pleasant, but because it was believed to give a man the strength and vitality of a horse. You likely know it by its modern name, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha, botanically known as Withania somnifera, is a small woody shrub native to India, North Africa, and parts of the Mediterranean. It is an adaptogen, meaning it helps the body adapt to stress. And this is absolutely critical, because stress is one of the most powerful destroyers of testosterone that exists. Here is how to think about it. Your body produces hormones through a system of priorities. At the top of that priority list is survival. When your body perceives chronic stress, whether that stress comes from overwork, sleep deprivation, financial anxiety, relationship tension, or even excessive exercise, it produces more and more of the stress hormone cortisol. And cortisol and testosterone are made from the same raw materials in your body. They compete. Think of it like a factory with a limited supply of raw materials. As long as the alarm is sounding, as long as cortisol production is at high demand, the factory diverts everything it has to that emergency hormone. Testosterone production, falls to almost nothing. Because in survival mode, reproduction and vitality are luxuries your body cannot afford. Ashwagandha directly addresses this. Multiple double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials, the gold standard of clinical research, have shown that daily supplementation with ashwagandha root extract reduces cortisol levels by an average of 27 to 30%. And when cortisol goes down, testosterone goes up. A landmark study published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found that men who supplemented with ashwagandha for 8 weeks saw testosterone levels increase by an average of 15 to 17%. Another study focused specifically on men experiencing infertility found increases in testosterone that were nearly double that. But here is what makes ashwagandha particularly remarkable from a self-sufficiency standpoint. It is one of the easiest medicinal plants you can grow yourself. It thrives in dry, sandy soil with full sun. It is drought-resistant. It requires very little maintenance once established. The roots are harvested in the fall, dried, and ground into a powder that can be mixed into warm milk, tea, or food. You do not need a pharmacy. You do not need a prescription. You need a small patch of ground and the knowledge of what to do with it. Stay with me. Because the second plant builds on this foundation in a very specific and powerful way. If ashwagandha works by clearing the path for testosterone production by reducing cortisol, the second plant works by directly stimulating the body's own testosterone manufacturing process. Its name is Tribulus terrestris, and it has a history so old and so widespread that you will find it in the traditional medicine systems of almost every ancient civilization, from the Greeks to the Chinese to the Romans to the indigenous peoples of India and sub-Saharan Africa. Tribulus is a low-growing plant with small yellow flowers and sharp, spiky seed pods. It grows in wastelands, roadsides, dry fields. In many parts of the world, it is considered a weed. And there is something deeply symbolic about that. One of the most powerful hormone-supporting plants on Earth, growing in the cracks in the pavement, ignored and stepped over by millions of people who would pay a small fortune for the same compounds in a bottle. The active compounds in Tribulus terrestris are called steroidal saponins, particularly one called protodiosine. What these compounds do is increase the body's production of a hormone called luteinizing hormone, or LH. This is crucial, and most people never realize this distinction. Luteinizing hormone is the signal that travels from your brain to your testes, telling them to produce testosterone. It is the command, not the hormone itself. And in many men with low testosterone, the problem is not that the testes are incapable of producing more, it is that they are not receiving a strong enough signal to do so. The factory is intact. The machinery is functional. But the orders have stopped coming in. Tribulus turns the volume back up on that signal. It gives the brain permission, or rather, the chemical tools, to communicate more clearly with the body's testosterone production centers. Studies have shown increases in luteinizing hormone of up to 72% in men supplementing with standardized Tribulus extract. And corresponding increases in testosterone have been well documented in Bulgarian military research from the 1980s, as well as multiple independent studies conducted since then. You can grow Tribulus terrestris easily in warm, dry climates. In cooler regions, it can be grown as an annual. The aerial parts of the plant, the leaves, flowers, and fruit, are traditionally dried and used in teas and tinctures, is less than (5 is greater than. The root is also used in some traditions. It is a resilient plant that asks very little of the soil, which again is a beautiful metaphor for what it does in the body. It asks very little of your hormonal system while giving a great deal back. Now, the third plant is one you may have encountered in your kitchen, but I promise you, you have never thought about it in this context. And once you hear this, you will never look at it the same way again. The plant is fenugreek, Trigonella phoenum graecum, a small annual herb with clover-like leaves and seeds that smell faintly of maple syrup. You have probably seen it in curry blends, in bread, in pickles. It is one of the oldest cultivated plants in human history, with records of its use dating back to ancient Egypt, where it was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun. But fenugreek is not just a spice. It is a testosterone amplifier of a very specific and important kind. Here is the mechanism that most people never hear about. Testosterone in your body does not all exist in the same form. There is free testosterone, the active, biologically available form that your body can actually use. And there is bound testosterone that has been captured and made inactive by a protein called sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG. In many men, total testosterone levels are not dramatically low. But their free testosterone, the amount that is actually available to the body to use, is very low. Because SHBG is doing its job too aggressively, locking up testosterone and effectively making it biologically invisible. This is crucial. Understanding the difference between total testosterone and free testosterone could change the entire way you understand your own health. And fenugreek directly targets this problem. The compounds in fenugreek, particularly the steroidal saponins called fenucides and diosgenin, have been shown to inhibit the enzymes that produce SHBG, effectively freeing up more testosterone for the body to actually use. A randomized controlled trial published in the journal Phytotherapy Research found that men supplementing with fenugreek extract for 6 weeks experienced a significant increase in free testosterone, along with improved libido, energy, and body composition compared to the placebo group. And here is the self-sufficiency angle that I love about fenugreek. It is one of the easiest plants you can grow in a garden or even in a pot on a windowsill. It grows quickly. It does not require special soil or care. You can harvest both the leaves and the seeds. The seeds can be sprouted and eaten fresh, added to food daily. Or they can be dried and ground and consumed as a powder in water or mixed into meals. You plant this once, and you have a continuous, renewable source of one of nature's most effective testosterone-freeing compounds. Let us move to the fourth plant. And this one may surprise you more than any other on this list, because it is something most people in the Western world have been told to avoid, or at best, treat as an irritating nuisance. I am talking about the stinging nettle, Urtica dioica, the same plant that your grandmother told you not to touch in the garden, the same plant that sends hikers hopping and cursing when they brush against it on a trail. Most people know stinging nettle only as a problem, a weed with sharp, hair-like needles that inject a burning chemical into the skin on contact. But here is the truth that has been known by herbalists, natural healers, and traditional physicians for centuries. Stinging nettle root is one of the most powerful natural SHBG inhibitors ever discovered. Remember what we just talked about with fenugreek, the problem of bound testosterone. Nettle root attacks that same problem, but through a slightly different and complementary mechanism. The lignans in nettle root, particularly a compound called 3,4-divenylyl tetrahydrofuran, bind directly to SHBG themselves, occupying the same receptor sites where testosterone would normally be captured. Think of it like this. SHBG is a lock. Testosterone is a key. When testosterone gets stuck in that lock, it cannot go anywhere, cannot enter cells, cannot do its work, cannot make you feel alive and vital. What nettle root does is send in decoy keys. The locks get filled by the nettle compounds instead. Testosterone stays free. Testosterone can do its job. Multiple in vitro and human studies have confirmed that nettle root lignans have a strong affinity for SHBG in some laboratory models, comparable to testosterone itself. Clinical use of nettle root, in combination with other herbs, has shown measurable improvements in free testosterone, prostate health, and urinary function in men, which is why it has been used for centuries, specifically for men's health in European herbal medicine traditions. And you do not need to go looking for this plant. In most temperate parts of the world, it is already there. Growing in the edges of your property, along fences, in disturbed soil, near streams. If you have been pulling it up and throwing it away, you have been discarding medicine. The root can be dried and made into teas, tinctures, or capsule powders. And young nettle leaves, when cooked or dried, lose their sting entirely and become a highly nutritious green food, rich in iron, magnesium, and other minerals that themselves support hormonal health. There is a theme building here. Can you feel it? The plants we have covered so far, ashwagandha, clearing the cortisol roadblock, tribulus, amplifying the hormonal signal, fenugreek, and nettle root, liberating bound testosterone, these are not random. They work on different parts of the same system. They approach the same goal from different angles. And when you understand that, you start to see something that most people never see. Nature does not give us a single solution. Nature gives us a complete system. Let us continue. The fifth plant on this list is one that I believe deserves far more attention in Western culture than it currently receives. It is not a plant most people in Europe or North America will recognize by sight. But in Southeast Asia, particularly in Malaysia and Indonesia, it has been revered for centuries as the most powerful men's tonic herb in the known world. Its name is Tongkat Ali, Eurycoma longifolia, a tall, slender tree that grows in the rainforests of Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and surrounding regions. The root of this tree, which can take years to develop, has been used in traditional Malay medicine for so long that the exact origin of its use is lost to history. Local fishermen, laborers, and hunters have consumed it before demanding physical tasks for generations. Warriors consumed it before battle. Older men consumed it to maintain their vitality into advanced age. Modern science has spent considerable effort trying to understand why. And what they have found is remarkable. Tongkat Ali works through multiple distinct mechanisms simultaneously, which is unusual for a single plant and explains much of its extraordinary potency. First, like tribulus, it stimulates the Leydig cells in the testes, the actual cells responsible for testosterone production, to increase their output. Second, it contains compounds called quasinoids and uripeptides that have been shown to inhibit SHBG. Third, and this is particularly important, it has been shown to directly reduce the conversion of testosterone into estrogen, a process called aromatization. This is something most people never realize. In men, particularly as they age, testosterone does not simply disappear. In many cases, it is being converted into estrogen by an enzyme called aromatase. Higher body fat levels, especially abdominal fat, dramatically increase aromatase activity. So a man can be producing a reasonable amount of testosterone, but if aromatase is working aggressively, that testosterone is being converted before it ever has a chance to work. Tongkat Ali has been shown in clinical research to reduce the rate of aromatization, effectively protecting testosterone from this conversion pathway. A study published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition in 2013 involving recreational male athletes found that Tongkat Ali supplementation over 5 weeks resulted in significant improvements in total free testosterone, as well as markers of muscle strength. A study in men with late-onset hypogonadism clinical testosterone deficiency found that over 1 month of Tongkat Ali use, nearly 91% of subjects showed improvement in testosterone levels, moving back into the normal range. Now, here is the practical reality. Tongkat Ali is a tropical tree that cannot be grown in cold climates outdoors. But for those of you in zones 9, 10, and 11, or for anyone with a greenhouse or a strong commitment to container gardening, it is absolutely possible to cultivate. For those in colder regions, responsibly sourced Tongkat Ali root powder and standardized extracts are available, is less than #0.5 is greater than AS. And at the end of this video, I will talk about how to build a protocol that combines these plants effectively. So stay with me. The 6th plant brings us back to something more familiar, and this one will genuinely surprise you in terms of its potency. You have cooked with it. You have brewed it in tea. You may have used it to settle your stomach or warm you on a cold morning. But I doubt you have ever thought of ginger Zingiber officinale as a testosterone-boosting plant of the first order. And yet, the research says exactly that. A striking study conducted in Iraq and published in Tikrit Medical Journal examined the effects of ginger supplementation on testosterone levels in men with fertility challenges. The results were remarkable. After 3 months of daily ginger supplementation, participants experienced an average testosterone increase of 17.5%. And those numbers have been replicated in animal models, showing increases as high as 45%. How does it work? Through several synergistic mechanisms. Ginger is a powerful antioxidant that specifically protects the Leydig cells in the testes from oxidative damage. Remember those Leydig cells from the Tongkat Ali section, the cells that actually manufacture testosterone? One of the primary reasons testosterone production declines with age and with chronic inflammation is that these cells suffer cumulative oxidative damage over time. They become less efficient. They produce less. Ginger enters the picture like a maintenance crew. Its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compounds, particularly gingerols and shogols, specifically concentrate in testicular tissue and reduce the free radical burden on those cells. Healthier Leydig cells produce more testosterone. It is that direct. Ginger also increases levels of luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone, the same hormonal signaling pathway that tribulus targets, and it improves blood circulation to the reproductive organs, which has its own cascade of benefits. From a self-sufficiency perspective, ginger may be the most practical plant on this entire list. It grows in a pot on a sunny windowsill. It grows in a garden bed in warm climates. You plant one rhizome, and within a single growing season, you have more ginger than you can use. Fresh, dried, juiced, or made into a strong daily tea, the therapeutic dose is achievable through food alone with consistency. This is a plant that costs almost nothing, requires almost nothing, and gives back enormously. We are now at the 7th plant. And this one has one of the most fascinating and little-known stories in all of botanical medicine. It grows as a climbing vine. Its flowers are a deep, rich purple, almost violet, and they hang in clusters so stunning that people grow it purely for ornament. Its seeds are covered in fine hairs that cause intense itching on contact with skin, is less than #0.5 is greater than, and inside those seeds is one of the highest natural concentrations of L-dopa ever found in a plant. This is Mucuna pruriens, also known as velvet bean, or in Ayurvedic medicine as kapikachu, meaning what is carried by a monkey, because wild monkeys in the forests of India and Africa have long been observed seeking it out and consuming it. L-dopa is the direct precursor to dopamine in the human brain. And this connection between dopamine and testosterone is one of the most overlooked and underappreciated relationships in men's hormonal health. Here is what most people never realize. Testosterone and dopamine are deeply interconnected, not just as parallel outcomes of health, but as actual chemical partners. Dopamine stimulates the hypothalamus to produce gonadotropin-releasing hormone, the very top of the hormonal cascade that ultimately ends in testosterone production. When dopamine is low, the entire testosterone production chain slows down at its source. In modern men, dopamine depletion is an epidemic. We live in an environment that hijacks the dopamine system constantly through social media, processed food, pornography, gambling, sedentary entertainment. Every short-term dopamine hit leaves the system slightly more depleted, slightly less sensitive, slightly less able to send those critical signals to the body to produce testosterone. Mucuna pruriens, by providing a direct, natural source of L-dopa, gives the brain the raw material it needs to restore healthy dopamine signaling. And multiple clinical studies have confirmed the downstream effect on testosterone. A study published in Fertility and Sterility found that mucuna supplementation significantly increased testosterone levels in infertile men, with increases averaging over 38% in some groups. Improvements in LH, dopamine levels, and sperm quality were also documented. There is something profound about this plant. In a world that is systematically depleting the neurochemical foundation of masculine vitality through artificial stimulation and processed living, a vine with purple flowers quietly offers restoration through the most natural pathways. Through the raw building blocks of the brain's own reward and drive system. Mucuna can be grown as an annual in most temperate climates, and as a perennial in tropical zones. The dried seed powder is the most commonly used form therapeutically. Important note: the raw seeds should never be consumed without preparation, as they contain compounds that can cause digestive distress. They should be properly dried, roasted, or processed. Traditional preparations often involved roasting and grinding the seeds into a paste consumed with ghee or warm milk. We have arrived at the eighth and final plant. And I have saved this one for last not because it is the least important, but because in many ways it is the most foundational of all. Because without what this plant provides, none of the others can work to their full potential. The plant is pine. Specifically, the pollen of pine trees, primarily Pinus sylvestris and related species. And what makes pine pollen unique on this entire list is a single, extraordinary fact. Pine pollen is one of the only plant substances on Earth that contains actual phytoandrogens, plant-based testosterone analogs. Not precursors. Not compounds that stimulate your body to make more testosterone. Actual androgenic compounds, including testosterone itself, in bioavailable form. In the spring, when pine trees release their pollen, those clouds of yellow dust that coat cars and furniture and make people sneeze, they are releasing one of the most remarkable natural substances in the botanical world. Pine pollen contains testosterone, DHEA, androstenedione, and androsterone in concentrations that, while small, are bioavailable when the pollen is tinctured in alcohol and absorbed under the tongue, bypassing the digestive process that would otherwise destroy them. Traditional Chinese medicine has used pine pollen for over 2,000 years. It was called a longevity tonic, a substance that preserved the vitality of men and women into old age. It was reserved in some historical records for the emperor's court, because it was considered that valuable. Modern analysis using high-performance liquid chromatography has confirmed the presence of testosterone in pine pollen at concentrations of approximately 800 nanograms per 10 grams of pollen is less than #0.5 is greater than. That sounds small. And it is, comparatively. But the sublingual bioavailability of pine pollen tincture means it enters the bloodstream rapidly and directly, without the digestive degradation that oral testosterone preparations suffer. Beyond the androgens themselves, pine pollen is nutritionally extraordinary. It contains over 200 bioactive nutrients, including every essential amino acid, a full range of vitamins including B-complex and vitamin D, and a wide array of minerals including zinc, which is absolutely essential for testosterone production. A man who is deficient in zinc cannot produce optimal testosterone. Period. And pine pollen provides zinc in a natural food matrix, alongside the cofactors that enhance its absorption. You do not need to plant a pine tree. There is almost certainly one near you. Pollen collection is simple and requires only a timing awareness. You must collect it during the brief window in spring when the male catkins are releasing. The pollen can be collected by shaking the branches over a container, then dried and stored in airtight glass jars, or immediately tincted in high-proof spirits. It is free. It is everywhere. And most people walk past it every year without ever knowing what they are leaving behind. Now let us bring everything together. Because this is the part that matters most. 8 plants. 8 distinct mechanisms. And when you look at them together, you begin to see a complete picture of what hormonal restoration through nature actually looks like. Ashwagandha clears the cortisol roadblock. It gives your body permission to stop treating every moment as an emergency, so it can redirect resources toward vitality rather than survival. Tribulus turns up the hormonal signal, the command from the brain to the testes, so that the production system is operating at full capacity and not being suppressed by a quiet signal that has been fading for years. Fenugreek liberates free testosterone from the grip of SHBG, making what your body is already producing actually available to use, rather than locked away where it cannot reach its targets. Stinging nettle root reinforces that liberation through a complementary mechanism, occupying the same binding sites through its lignans, so that testosterone remains free and biologically active. Tongkat Ali works from 3 directions simultaneously, stimulating production, inhibiting binding, and blocking the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. It is the most comprehensive single herb on this list in terms of the breadth of its hormonal influence. Ginger protects the cells that make testosterone from oxidative damage, ensuring that the manufacturing infrastructure itself is maintained and functioning well as the years pass. Mucuna pruriens rebuilds the neurochemical foundation, the dopamine signaling, that initiates the entire testosterone production cascade at the level of the brain itself. Without this, every other intervention is working against a headwind. And pine pollen provides the raw androgenic building blocks and nutritional cofactors that the entire system needs to function: the micronutrients, the phytoandrogens, the zinc, the broad-spectrum nutritional support that makes everything else more effective. These 8 plants are not redundant. They are complementary. They address the problem from 8 distinct angles. And this is not an accident of nature. It is the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years of human observation, refined by traditional healers across every culture on Earth, and now increasingly confirmed by modern biochemical research. Now, I want to speak to you directly for a moment. Not as a content creator. Not as someone with a list to complete. But as someone who has spent years studying what it means for a man to be healthy in a world that is, in many ways, systematically working against that health, the declining testosterone epidemic is real. It is documented. It is measurable. And its consequences, the fatigue, the lost motivation, the eroded confidence, the diminished sense of purpose and drive, are not small. They affect everything. The quality of your relationships, your capacity to work and build, your ability to be present for the people who depend on you, your sense of who you are. And the system that profits from your hormonal decline has very little incentive to tell you that the solution may already be growing in a pot on your windowsill, in the corner of your garden, or in the forest behind your house. Self-sufficiency is not just about food. It is not just about energy independence or financial security. It is about knowing deeply, practically, confidently knowing how to maintain your own health using what nature has provided. It is about not being entirely dependent on a pharmaceutical industry, a medical system, or a supply chain for the basic functioning of your own body. When you grow ashwagandha in your garden, you are not just growing a plant. You are growing independence. When you learn to identify and harvest nettle root from the edges of your property, you are reclaiming knowledge that your great-grandparents had, and that somewhere in the last century, we were persuaded to stop needing. When you collect pine pollen in spring and tincture it yourself, you are participating in a relationship between human beings and the living world that is older than recorded history. This is not nostalgia. This is strategy. Because the knowledge that allows you to support your own health independently is knowledge that no crisis can take from you. It is not sitting in a supply chain waiting to be disrupted. It is not behind a paywall or a prescription pad. It is in the ground beneath your feet, and in your own hands, and in your own mind, once you have chosen to learn it. A few practical notes before we close. These plants are powerful, and with power comes responsibility. If you are currently on medication, particularly blood pressure medication, blood thinners, diabetes medication, or any hormone therapy, please consult with a knowledgeable practitioner before adding these plants to your routine. Some of them interact with medications in ways that require monitoring. Ashwagandha, in particular, has thyroid-modulating properties that can amplify the effects of thyroid medication. Tongkat Ali and Tribulus should be cycled, meaning used for a period and then given a break to maintain their sensitivity and avoid suppressing the body's own hormonal production signals over time. Quality matters enormously. If you are purchasing these plants as supplements rather than growing them yourself, choose standardized extracts from reputable sources. The supplement industry is largely unregulated, and the difference between a well-prepared Tongkat Ali extract standardized for uricomanone content and a cheap, poorly sourced powder can be the difference between significant results and no results at all. Start with 1 or 2 plants rather than all 8 simultaneously. Give your body time to respond. Observe carefully. Keep a simple journal of how you feel: energy, sleep quality, mood, drive, physical performance, and give any new plant at least 4 to 8 weeks before evaluating its effect. Hormonal shifts are not overnight events. They are slow, cumulative, and require consistency above all else. And do not underestimate the foundational work that these plants cannot replace. Sleep. There is no plant on this list or anywhere else that can compensate for chronic sleep deprivation. Testosterone is primarily produced during deep sleep. Prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep will do more for your testosterone than any supplement in any dosage. Resistance training, lifting heavy things with your body, is the single most powerful non-chemical stimulus for testosterone production known to medicine. Reducing body fat, particularly abdominal fat, directly reduces aromatase activity and increases free testosterone. And eliminating or dramatically reducing alcohol, particularly beer, which contains phytoestrogens from hops, will remove one of the most common but least discussed chemical burdens on men's hormonal systems. The plants in this video work best as part of a life that is already aligned with your biology. They are powerful amplifiers. They are not substitutes for the foundational work of living well. I want to leave you with something to think about as you go from here. There was a time not so long ago in the span of human history when every community had people who understood plants. Who knew what grew in the hedgerows and the forest edges and the disturbed ground at the margins of cultivated fields? Who could look at a man struggling with fatigue or diminished vitality and say, "Here is what you need, and here is where to find it"? That knowledge was not primitive. It was accumulated over thousands of generations of careful observation, passed from elder to apprentice, from parent to child, from healer to community. And within the span of roughly 2 generations, it was largely dismantled and replaced by a system that prefers to treat the symptom, sell the solution, and keep you coming back. What we are doing here in these conversations, on this channel, in the growing community of people who are choosing self-sufficiency and nature first, living over passive dependence, is a form of reclamation. We are remembering what we were taught to forget. We are learning what should never have been lost. The 8 plants we have discussed today are waiting for you. Some of them may already be growing near you without your knowing it. And every one of them represents a step not just toward higher testosterone, not just toward greater physical vitality, but toward something more important than any of that. Toward a relationship with the natural world that is direct, practical, and yours. That does not require a middleman. That cannot be disrupted by a supply chain or denied by a system. That lives in your hands and your knowledge and your garden. Do not wait for the perfect moment to begin. The perfect moment is the one where you decide that your health, your real, deep, hormonal, energetic, masculine health, is worth the 30 minutes it takes to plant a seed or brew a tea or order a root powder and commit to using it for 60 days. That decision costs you almost nothing. And what it returns, over months and years, may be more significant than you can currently imagine from where you are standing right now. If this video gave you something real, something you are going to carry with you and act on, please share it. Share it with a man in your life who needs to hear this. A friend, a brother, a father, a son. Because this information should not be hidden away on a single video that the algorithm may or may not show to the people who need it most. The best way you can help it reach those people is by sharing it yourself. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already. We are building something here, a genuine resource for people who take their self-sufficiency, their independence, and their health seriously. There is much more to come, and every video builds on the ones before it. Leave a comment below. Tell me which of these 8 plants you already knew about. Tell me which one surprised you most. Tell me which one you are going to start with. Or ask me a question. I read every single comment, and I respond to as many as I can. Because this channel is not a broadcast, it is a conversation, and you are a part of it. Thank you for giving me your time today. Protect your health. Grow your knowledge. Trust the earth that made you. And I will see you in the next one.